Challenge accepted. Okay. So, Marvel Legends versus DC Universe. Well, now, that's a very, very interesting topic for discussion. Recently, I posted a figure review of an Aquaman action figure, the multiverse figure. And I had with me some comparisons, and one of those comparisons was DC Universe Classics. Now, that being said, I did mention that, in my opinion, the DC Universe Classics figures is one of our best modern action figure lines, and someone challenged me on it. They have challenged the collector, and your challenge has been accepted. So, basically, I did a very good job on the Marvel Legends, but as we all know, like anything else, it had its moments, it had its flops. Same with Hasbro. Basically, in my opinion, now again, this is opinion, this is not necessarily fact, this is just opinion, but Hasbro will tend to reuse a body type that is pretty flawed over and over and over again. I'll cite one example, Marvel Legends Claw action figure. The torso has a gap in it when you just take it out of the package. It's a very lanky, very scrawny figure. The musculature of the figure, he's very lean, but the build, he's very blocky. So the sculpt is done in square chunks. It's not smooth, it's not detailed, it's not really very well done. The paint applications are weak, and that tends to happen a lot on the Marvel Legends figures. Paint applications can be hit or miss. The figure build themselves tend to be not so great in a lot of different figures. Now, you'll get a figure that is a fantastic figure on occasion, and don't get me wrong, I'm a Marvel Legends collector as well. But when it comes to some of the newer figures, they've really done a great job changing the body style around, kind of smoothing out the articulation issues. And I would say recently, in the last 2 to 3 runs, they've significantly improved. So I will give it that. For example, Omega Red, it's an excellent figure. The proportions are nice, the articulation's excellent, the decisions that they made when choosing the joints and how to move the figure are very good. The paint applications are very good. That's a top recently, like Dr. Octopus from the Spider-Man Legends line is an excellent figure. The Bishop figure from the X-Men line or the Deadpool line is an excellent figure. Cable's okay, not the best, but all right, he got better. That first version was terrible. So Marvel Legends does have its moments. The thing that's so great, in my opinion, about the DC Universe Classics line is, for one, they went back and they took a lot of inspiration from the DC Superpowers line. For me, that is excellent, because that was one of my all-time favorite product lines as a kid. I loved the DC Superpowers line of figures. It was probably one of my, if not my favorite when I was little, action figure line to have. I like that DC Universe Classics paid homage to that line, took a lot of their inspiration for their figures from that. As you go along in the DC Universe Classics history, you'll see that there's varying body types that are used. Like, for example, the Demon figure is a very unique body type. Clayface is an excellent figure. They took chances on their materials. They didn't just use a plastic. They took chances on how to integrate, like, for example, Clayface, that rubber body with the endoskeleton inside. It's one of those things where I think that a lot of the decisions that were made were done in a way to create a common body type for certain size characters, but then also the sculpting to integrate certain elements of costumes, like, for example, on Superboy or Mr. Terrific. Those are excellent figures, because what they do is they give you the illusion of a jacket or some outerwear of some sort, but the sculpted details are excellent. Articulation is exactly what you would need. It's not overly articulated. It's not under-articulated. It's just right. They really did take time to develop a body style and an overall aesthetic that really worked for the entire line, and they adhered to it. After a while, they started to improve. They started adding double-jointed elbows, double-jointed knees, and certain other pieces of articulation to really make the figures. So I just happen to have here, this is a Superman from the DC multiverse, and it's one of the Rebirth figures. Now, They have significantly changed the way the body is articulated, the torso, the elbows, everything. What they've done is they've kind of smoothed things out a little bit as far as the sculpt goes. The legs are a little bit more seamless. However, I'm not a huge fan. I think it's just missing something from Four Horsemen's DC Universe Classic sculpts. It's not the same piece. Now, the face is a lot better, I think, but that's one problem I had with DC Universe Classics was the Superman figures. The face was kind of derpy looking. He kind of looked like, I don't know, he looked a little messed up. And they kind of kept that face. They didn't change it very much. Now, when they changed it, they gave him the long hair when they did the long hair version of Superman in the DC Universe Classics line, and they significantly improved the face sculpt of Superman. And I think they should have done that for later releases, and unfortunately they didn't. So that's disappointing. However, most of those figures are very highly sought after. Most of those figures are very well made. Most of those figures, in my opinion, had very little breakage when you open them out of the package. Marvel Legends don't have a lot of breakage either, but they tend to sometimes be difficult to pose. I never really had any problems with the DC Universe Classics figures. So, basically, I think that, yes, the DC Universe are probably one of the best modern action figures, the action figure collections that were made. And that is the character accuracy of the comic book style that they tried to adhere to is always excellent. I have yet to look at a figure and say to myself, ugh, every single figure that they did was done in such a way that it really appealed to collectors who wanted to complete whatever Justice League or Justice Society or whatever type of figure team that they were trying to collect for DC Comics. That's another unique thing about the DC Universe Classics line is it covered a lot of ground. It covered a lot of characters. The variety of characters were fantastic. Very rarely did you have a figure line where you looked at the line and said to yourself, what the hell do I want these for? I don't like most of these. I just want this one. The Collect and Connect Build-A-Figure pieces were very good quality. There was Metamorpho was a little tough. He never stayed together for me. However, they that around in the next series when they started to expand on the whole Build-A-Figure idea. That Batman, the Bane Build-A-Figure is excellent. Solomon Grundy's excellent. Gorilla Grodd is excellent. The sculpting is just amazing. The detail, the way everything fits together, Apache Chief, Metallo, all of those Build-A-Figures were just of great, great quality, in my opinion. And, just the sculpts, the comic book accuracy of those characters, the way they sculpted the details and everything about those figures, they really nailed it. The paint applications, the sculpting, the accessories that came with the figure. Marvel Legends is very hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes it looks like the character, sometimes it doesn't. Articulation is varied depending on the type of body you're getting. However, one thing that really drives me crazy about Marvel Legends is that you have the one or two go-to figures in the lineup that you have to complete your whatever collection, and then the other figures are in the lineup are figures that are basically custom fodder and trade fodder that nobody wants. It just seems to work out that way to me. And first example that I can think of is the Spider-Bot figure line. Now, me personally, the only figure that I wanted out of that entire line was Dr. Octopus, and he didn't even come with a Build-A-Figure piece. So, to me, that says something about the figure choices that they make. There are so many characters that they could put together to make a great line of figures, and they don't sometimes. For example, Deadpool. There's quite a few different characters they can make associated with Deadpool. They could really touch on the X-Force characters if I don't know if they have the licensing for that or whatever, but they could touch upon X-Force and pull characters in from there. But instead, you get 4 different Deadpools in different poses. It's kind of like, it's not my thing. If you're a fan of Deadpool, you probably enjoy it. But as far as like the Spider-Bot Build-A-Figure for Marvel Legends Spider-Man series with Dr. Octopus in it, to me, Dr. Octopus is the only figure to get in that entire lineup. As far as the Apocalypse Wave, to me, the only figures to get were Wolverine and Sabretooth. And, that to me were the only figures I really wanted. I would say in a lot of like the Doctor Strange line, really, basically you try to get the figures to build the figure pieces, and then most of those figures you're getting discarded. They're really not that good. Same thing with figures like, for example, the Lizard line from Spider-Man Legends. Honestly, the only go-to figures in that line, at least for me, were Mysterio, for one. That was probably the number one figure for me to get in that entire line. Everything else, you just basically get the figure to put Lizard together. Same thing with the Sandman series. Really, you only have the one Spider-Man figure to pick up for the Sandman series, and that's pretty much it. Hobgoblin you wanted Spider-Man 2099 and Daredevil. That's kind of like, Marvel does that a lot, or at least Hasbro does that a lot, is they put these B characters in the figure lines, and so you kind of like, and they do an amazing Build-A-Figure. So you have to buy all the figures just so you can have the awesome Build-A-Figure, and then it's a letdown as far as the lineup itself. DC Universe Classics, it was very difficult to say that given one figure line that came out especially when they were doing the Build-A-Figures, it was very difficult to say, I don't really want that figure. I don't really need that figure. All 5 or 6 of those figures in that lineup to build that figure, whatever that Collect and Connect figure was, you were most likely buying the whole set, which is why it was also very successful, and they were selling a lot of those figures. Is most of those figures were figures you wanted to add to your collection. I pretty much in most cases bought the entire series. Each figure series that came out, every Collect and Connect figure that I had collected myself, I probably, and in most cases, purchased the entire set. A lot of the Marvel Legends figures, I tend to get 1 or 2 characters that I really want. The rest of them are junk, and I try to put together the Build-A-Figure based on trades of other things. I don't tend to buy a lot of those other characters. I collect the ones I like, but I found personally in the DC Universe Classics line, almost every character was a must-have for me, whereas in contrast to Marvel Legends, it really wasn't. So that's one other reason why I feel that the DC Universe Classics figures are much more successful as far as a figure line. And as they started to evolve and change, they got away from the Collect and Connect. They started to do the Anniversary series. They started to do like the Green Lantern stuff. And then it kind of started to die off. And that you could see was the beginning and the end for the DC Universe Classics series. As far as the Multiverse series goes, there are a lot of figures that are coming out now where I think they're starting to revisit that idea of putting a figure out there in the lineup that most people are going to want to purchase. For example, the Lobo series that's going to be coming out. That's something where, and you can check out that figure set in the link below, when you look at the comments and everything. But, that for me, that particular series, like the Kingdom Come Superman is one, so a figure that I really want. The Green Lantern figure I would really want to get. Those are the 2 that are like, wow, I got to get those figures. Other than that, I would say I don't mind getting the other ones just to put together Lobo. I think that's a really cool concept. Now, of course, as you can see, it's not the same as 4 Horsemen. The Lobo figure is basically a Master of the Universe body. That's just what it is, and you can tell. I mean, if you have Masters of the Universe Classics figures, you can tell that they're basically recycling the mold, and they're just changing some things around to make it Lobo, but the body is a Masters of the Universe Classics tooling. So I'm not as impressed with multiverse sets as I am with DC Universe Classics. And where I go through my collection periodically and I say to myself, I can get rid of these Marvel Legends, I can get rid of these Marvel Legends. I really can't say that for most of my DC Universe Classics figures. I look at those figures and I think, wow, they really don't make them like this. Now, sometimes in the earlier series, the articulation was limited, but at the same time, it gave you what you needed. You can still get some great poses out of those figures. Now, the joints were a little blocky, but I tend to ignore that on that particular line because I feel that the comic book likeness, the sculpting, and the detail are really very unique. They didn't tend to cut a lot of corners when it came to making a character look like a comic. And Marvel Legends tends to cut some of those corners. They basically take the same body type and they repeat it. They don't give any variation to paint applications, costume details, and things of that nature. They'll try to retool a lot. And I know that with the cost of materials and everything, that can be an issue. But basically, when it came to DC Universe Classics, they had the basic body type, but then they would do things to the body to make it look like the character. For example, Man-Bat, Two-Face, and they evolved Two-Face, the Riddler, and they evolved Riddler. Then you've got the different Batmans that were always, that's a great Batman figure. Most of those DC Universe Classics Batmans are just excellent quality figures. I'm trying to think, when they then came out with Robin in the later series with all the new joints. I mean, they really did an amazing job if you think about it. And then for one, the classic Green Arrow is an excellent figure. Martian Manhunter is an excellent figure. So all of the core figures that I guess would comprise the DC Superpowers lineup that are sort of an homage to that series, those are all excellent figures. Every single one of them are fantastic figures. So I think it's one of those things where, if you're a Marvel Legends collector, you're going to be more in favor of Marvel Legends. If you're a DC collector, you're going to be in favor of DC. But if I'm both and looking at both, I always tend to lean towards and prefer to maintain my collection of Universe Classics figures than I do Marvel Legends. I tend to keep the core figures that I really like the characters of, like Iron Man and Spider-Man. But a lot of them I tend to let go over time. Whereas every time I look at my DC Universe Classics figures, I'm like, I love those figures. So that's where I base my opinion. I challenge you to respond. So thank you guys for watching. Please check out the link below to some great DC Universe products from Entertainment Earth. You can pre-order right there. Follow the links. Like, share, subscribe to the page. Hope you liked the video. Spread it around. I am the collector. You are watching the collector side. Thank you for visiting, and stay nerdy, people.